The elevator doors slid open with a sound like a sigh, soft, controlled, expensive. Ava Morales stepped out onto the 99th floor of Wolf International, heart rattling like a moth in a jar. Her heels clicked too loud on the marble as she clutched her worn tote, the leather cracked at the corners, and her iced latte already sweating in her hand. She whispered to herself, "Don't trip, don't sweat, don't faint." Around her, everything gleamed. Polished chrome, floor-to-ceiling glass. Air so cold and crisp, it could have been bottled and sold for $14. 99. This wasn't just a real estate empire, it was a cathedral of capitalism, and she was walking into its sanctum. Marketing intern. Unpaid. Temporary. Replaceable. She repeated the words like a mantra, something to keep her grounded, while the skyline glittered past the glass, Manhattan sprawling out beneath her like a promise. A cluster of assistants buzzed past her in black suits and Bluetooth headsets, moving with hive-like efficiency. Ava tried to look like she belonged, even if she was only here because of a desperate scholarship counselor, a half-pitched idea, and a favor pulled by a professor who once said she had feral ambition, whatever that meant. She turned the corner toward the intern bullpen, then it happened. A collision. A gasp. And then, catastrophe. Her iced latte exploded across a white dress shirt and deep navy suit. A slow-motion arc of coffee, milk, and ice rained down on a man with a presence so large the hallway bent around him. The silence that followed was surgical. "Oh God. I'm so sorry." Ava dropped her bag and began to pat his chest with the napkin from her purse. Mistake. The fabric only smeared the damage. The once pristine silk of his tie now bore a warped Rorschach of failure. He looked down at her hand on his chest. Then, up. He had the kind of face that made people forget how to lie, angular jaw, straight nose, and eyes like polished steel. Cold. Pale. Measured. "You do realize," he said, brushing a splinter of ice from his collar, "that this suit cost $10,000? His voice wasn't angry. Worse, it was bored. The kind of cool detachment that made Ava's spine contract. I didn't see you coming out," she stammered. "I didn't mean." "You didn't look." There was a pause. The air thickened. A junior exec down the hall was visibly turning pink, trying to pretend this wasn't happening. "I'll pay for it," Ava said, voice cracking like glass. "I'll clean it. Or replace it. I don't know how, but You won't." She blinked. "He won't?" He took a small step back. Not out of fear, just distance. Space. He looked at her again, this time really seeing her. The anxious eyes, the oversized blazer, the ID badge twisted sideways. Then, something shifted. A crease in his expression. "Amusement?" "You're the marketing intern," he said, stating it as fact. She managed to nod. "Ava Morales." "First day." He exhaled once, almost like a laugh, but not quite. His mouth didn't smile. His eyes didn't move. "I suggest you avoid collisions on your second." With that, he walked away, coffee slick and silent, as though she hadn't just ruined the wardrobe of a man who probably owned yachts. She stood frozen. Her cheeks burned. Her ears rang. Somewhere in the distance, someone whispered, "That's Lucas Wolf." Of course it is, she thought. The man. The myth. The youngest self-made CEO on the East Coast. Tabloid gold. Real estate king. Billionaire bachelor. And now, her accidental dry cleaning project. Later, in the women's bathroom, Ava sat on the toilet with the lid closed, hands clenched in her lap. Breathe. Regroup. You didn't Her phone buzzed. Marisol. "How's first day, Mia?" She stared at it for a moment before typing back. "I think I just destroyed a suit worth more than our apartment." 3 dots. Then, "LMAO, you are not. Fired are you." She almost smiled. Almost. Not yet. Back at her desk, technically, a shared table with 2 other interns, Ava kept her head down and her profile low. She took notes. Smiled at HR. Refrained from touching anything that looked expensive. But her thoughts kept spiraling. Every time someone passed by with slick hair and a clipboard, she braced for the hand on her shoulder. The whisper, "You're dismissed." The polite smile that came with corporate executions. Instead, she was summoned. "Mr. Wolf would like to see you." Awa blinked. "He what?" "Now, please. 99th floor. Glass office." She stood slowly. "Am I being let go?" The assistant smiled. "No idea. But I'd walk fast if I were you." The elevator ride to the 99th floor was slow, almost meditative, an ascent through glass and silence. Ava's reflection hovered in the mirrored walls, a smudge of panic, lip gloss faded, one strand of hair still stuck to her cheek from earlier humiliation. She had no idea what she would say when she got to his office. Maybe she should just fall to her knees and beg for mercy. When the doors opened, she stepped into a corridor that looked more like an art gallery than a corporate workspace. Minimalist paintings in oversized frames, warm oak floors, soft lighting that could have belonged to a high-end museum. At the far end, a glass office encased in panoramic views of Manhattan, the skyline like a jagged silver crown. Lucas Wolf stood at its center, back turned, a phone at his ear and his left hand tracing something invisible in the air. She froze at the entrance. He gestured without turning. "Come in." His voice was lower this time, less icy. Measured. She stepped inside. The glass door hissed shut behind her, sealing her into his world like a snow globe. Soundproof. Isolated. Surreal. Lucas ended the call and turned to face her. "I should have had you fired," he said. Ava braced herself, chin high. "If that's why I'm here, could you at least write me a recommendation for not being a complete disaster?" His brow lifted slightly, like he hadn't expected a spine beneath her oversized blazer. "You were assigned to the Huxley Towers marketing audit, correct?" She nodded, confused. "Yes. It's part of the intern rotation." "I read your pre-interview proposal," he said, moving to the sleek black desk behind him. "The one about repositioning Wolf International's brand toward urban youth. Real estate as culture, not just capital." Her throat went dry. "I didn't think anyone actually looked at those," she said. "I do." He held up a slim folder, the one she'd submitted weeks ago, half believing no one would care. On its cover was her name, printed in blocky font. Inside, her concept for rebranding the image of Wolf International using influencer partnerships, immersive pop-up events, and a digital art campaign. "I found it." "Inconveniently bold," Lucas said, sliding the folder back down. "And surprisingly intelligent." Ava blinked. "Thank you?" That wasn't a compliment. It was a preamble. He gestured toward the chair across from him. She sat stiffly. "You have a marketing instinct most of my junior execs lack. And you're not afraid of pissing off powerful people." A beat. Evidently, she couldn't help the breathy laugh that escaped her. "Is that your way of forgiving me for the suit?" He tilted his head, eyes unreadable. "No. It's my way of offering you something better than forgiveness." Silence bloomed between them. "I want to mentor you directly," Lucas said. Ava stared. "I what?" "1 hour every Friday," he continued, as if discussing weather. "You'll shadow my meetings, attend internal strategy sessions, and assist on the brand modernization initiative. Think of it as an unofficial apprenticeship." Her heart stammered. "Is that normal? Do other interns?" "No." He leaned back in his chair. "But I make the rules here." Something inside her tightened an ache that was not entirely fear. "Why me?" she asked, trying to sound professional. Not disparity. Not breathless. Lucas's gaze was heavy. "Because you're either very clever or very reckless. Either way, I want to know which." She didn't know how to respond. Her brain short-circuited somewhere between hell yes and this is career suicide. Instead, she whispered, "Okay." A slow smile tugged at the edge of his mouth, not warm, not cruel. "Just interested. I'll have Diana schedule your first session," he said, rising to signal the meeting was over. "And Miss Morales?" "Yes?" "Try not to ruin any more couture." I'm fond of the next suit." Ava turned before he could see her blush. Back in the elevator, she leaned against the mirrored wall, pulse racing like she'd just stepped off a roller coaster built by Greek gods and Wall Street sharks. What the hell had just happened? Her mind reeled. Mentorship with Lucas Wolf? That wasn't a resume booster. That was career nitroglycerin. By the time she reached the intern bullpen, the gossip had already begun. "Did he fire you? What did he say? Are you okay?" Ava gave the only answer she could. "I think I just got promoted." "Maybe?" She sat down, took a breath, and opened a new Google Doc titled, "Operation, Don't Screw This Up." That night, in a cramped Queens apartment with peeling paint and a window unit that coughed like an asthmatic cat, Ava tiptoed past her sleeping little brother and sat down on her twin bed. She pulled out her laptop, staring at the Wolf International homepage. Lucas Wolf's photo filled the screen, one of those staged shots in black and white. Him looking away from the camera, jawline like it had been carved from Manhattan granite. She clicked the browser shut, then opened a blank canvas in her mind. Mentor. CEO. Millionaire. Not crush. Definitely not temptation. She repeated the words in her head like a spell, but when she lay back on the mattress and closed her eyes, the last thing she saw was not his suit or his smirk. It was the look in his eyes when he said, "I want to know which." Chapter 2. The Pitch. Friday came cloaked in silver rain and the low hum of nerves. Ava stood outside Lucas Wolf's private boardroom, a tablet in her hands and self-doubt fluttering beneath her ribcage like moth wings. She'd triple-checked everything, the pitch slides, the brand concept draft, the notes on demographic shifts and consumer perception. Still, her palms were damp, and her reflection in the sleek black glass doors looked far too soft for the world behind them. "Go in," said Diana, Lucas's assistant, barely glancing up from her phone. "He hates waiting." Inside, the space was immaculate high-gloss floors, chrome table edges, a single abstract painting in strokes of indigo and bone gray. And him. Lucas sat at the far end of the 12-seat table, reading from a tablet, suit flawlessly tailored in charcoal wool that matched the clouds pressing against the windows. He didn't look up. "Take a seat," he said. Ava sat. The room felt too big for just two people. Her voice felt small. "I brought the revised campaign framework," she began, "based on the notes from your email. I ran the concept through 2 digital focus groups, Gen Z and Millennial, plus a sample of minority homeowners in upstate markets." Lucas finally looked at her. His eyes were piercing, unsettling in their stillness. They didn't flicker, didn't scan. They simply absorbed. "You ran focus groups," he repeated. Yes. Unofficial ones. I used an independent testing platform, paid out of pocket." His brow rose. "Why?" "Because I needed data. And because waiting 2 weeks for the official marketing team to approve anything would have tanked the momentum." A beat. "Then, go on." Ava tapped the tablet, and the projection screen behind her lit up. The Wolf International logo sleek. White serif on matte black dissolved into her proposed rebrand. Wolf Future Built. "Wolf is currently positioned as elite, untouchable, legacy-focused," Ava said, her voice strengthening as she moved into the current. "That resonates with traditional buyers, but you're bleeding cultural relevance. Younger consumers want trust, transparency, narrative." She swiped to the next slide, renderings of urban spaces repurposed into community hubs, apartment tours streamed live with artist collaborations, AI-powered design customization. "Wolf becomes more than real estate," she said. "It becomes a platform, a movement, built for your life before you even know what it looks like." She met his gaze, throat dry. "It's bolder than what your current team's doing, but it's honest. And honest brands don't get forgotten." Lucas was silent. The rain tapped faintly against the glass. Then he stood, walked toward her. His footsteps echoed like punctuation marks in a room otherwise frozen. When he reached her side, he picked up the tablet, scrolling slowly, one finger grazing the edge. Ava held her breath. "Finally," he said, "you're not afraid to burn the blueprint. I don't have one to begin with." He looked at her then, not just at her work, but at her. The posture, the breath she was holding, the flicker of fire behind her eyes she couldn't quite hide. "You remind me of someone I used to be," Lucas said. Ava's voice was barely above a whisper. "Before you were a CEO?" He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Cancel the meeting with Craig. I want Morales to present this to the regional board next week." She blinked. I thought this was just a practice pitch." "It's not," he said. "You're not here to practice. You're here to prove me right." The quiet thrill in her chest battled the sharp awareness in her brain. "You really trust an intern with the board?" Lucas turned back toward his seat, pausing only to say, "I don't trust interns. I trust results." The following hours passed in a blur of adrenaline. Meetings bled into edits. Edits turned into strategy calls. Ava found herself at Lucas's side for every interaction. From regional VP stand-ups to global rollout brainstorms, it was like she'd been airlifted from obscurity straight into the storm. By 8 p.m., the office had thinned. Manhattan glowed outside the glass like a galaxy of diamonds sunk into asphalt. The boardroom was quiet except for the rhythmic tapping of 2 keyboards. Ava sipped from her third coffee of the day, lukewarm now, and tried not to look at Lucas as he removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and began sketching on a tablet that didn't belong to any agenda. "Is that a building design?" she asked cautiously. He didn't answer. She stood and moved closer, daring to look over his shoulder. The sketch wasn't a building. It was a woman. A dancer, maybe arms extended in midair, torso twisted, emotion etched in every line. Lucas tilted the screen away. Not angry, but guarded. "I thought you said you didn't trust interns," she said lightly, trying to diffuse the sudden shift in mood. "I don't. Then why are you showing me your art?" He looked up, the corner of his mouth twitching. "I didn't say I was." She smirked, then softened. "You're good." Lucas studied her for a long moment. Not the way a man looks at an employee, the way an artist studies light, shadow, meaning. "No one's ever said that to me," he said. She blinked. "What? That you're good?" "No." He turned back to the sketch. "That I'm human." The moment stretched between them, quiet, but full of weight. Lucas's confession hung in the air like smoke, and Ava didn't know whether to pretend she hadn't heard it or press deeper into the space he'd unexpectedly opened. She stayed still, afraid even a blink would shatter it. "You don't let people see this side of you, do you?" she asked softly. His reply was a small breath through his nose. "There's no room for softness in the rooms I walk into. Art makes mistakes visible. And in my world, weakness is expensive." Ava swallowed. "Then maybe your world's the problem." Lucas turned toward her, something darkly curious sparking in his eyes. "Do you always talk to your boss like that?" "Only when he starts sounding like he's allergic to being seen." He studied her, lips parted just slightly as if he were about to respond, but then the tablet buzzed. "An alert." He picked it up and sighed. "Amelia moved the launch review to Monday morning," he muttered. The softness gone, like a blown-out candle. She didn't even ask. "Ewer tilde her hill. Amelia Roth, COO?" "Yes." There was a shadow in the way he said her name, cold and clipped. Ava had heard of her. Everyone had. Amelia Roth was the definition of polished cruelty. Fierce, brilliant, and terrifyingly loyal to the Wolf brand. Rumor was she'd once been more than Lucas's right hand. Lucas caught Ava's pause. "Whatever you've heard, it's probably true." "I didn't mean to pry." He returned to his sketch, but the rhythm was broken. The lines came sharper now. Rigid. "You're not prying," he said. "You're just observant." Which is dangerous. Ava arched an eyebrow. Dangerous? Smart people are predictable. They play chess. But observant people? He glanced up. They see the whole board and the players lying about what game they're in. Ava felt her pulse pick up. She wasn't sure if it was fear or fascination. She stepped back to her laptop, the safe zone, and tried to break the tension with humor. "Okay, but just for the record, I didn't see the board when I spilled coffee on you. That was a pure pawn move. That did it." Lucas laughed, soft and real, like it snuck out of him before he could press it back down. His eyes, too often narrowed and calculating, crinkled at the corners. For a moment, he looked young. Human. Eva smiled. You should do that more. What? Let interns mock me? No. Laugh. He didn't answer. But he didn't stop smiling either. Around 9. 15 PT. M. The cleaning crew arrived. Lucas glanced at his watch. Let's wrap for tonight, he said, voice slipping back into that smooth CEO timbre. You've done enough damage for 1 week. Eva groaned. I'm never going to live that down, am I? I'm keeping the stain, he said, gathering his things. It's the most honest thing anyone's put on one of my suits. She laughed as she packed her tote. Good night, mister. Wolfe. Lucas, he said, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. Her heart skidded. He looked at her with quiet amusement, almost daring her. Good night, Lucas. He gave her one last glance. A flicker of something unreadable in his expression. Then he disappeared through the side corridor, vanishing into the dim hum of the after-hours tower. By the time Eva made it down to the street, the rain had slowed to a whisper. The city sparkled under wet streetlights. Gold and silver laced with noise and life. She waited for the crosstown bus, arms wrapped around her coat. Thoughts knotted. She'd spent 8 hours alongside a man who wielded more power than most governments. And yet, when he let down the mask even briefly, he didn't seem untouchable. He seemed lonely. At home, her sister Olivia was asleep on the couch. Her calculus notes spilled like dominoes across the coffee table. Eva tiptoed in, her feet sore, her mind racing. She sat at the kitchen table and pulled out her notebook, the one she didn't use for work, the one with dreams scrawled in the margins. She turned to a blank page and began to write. Day 5. Wolfe HQ. I pitched a campaign to the most intimidating man I've ever met. He said I remind him of who he used to be. I think he's a better version of himself when he's not trying so hard to be Wolf. I saw one of his paintings. It looked like someone trying to remember how to feel. He let me see him. I don't know what that means yet. But I felt it, and I think he did too. She closed the notebook, her fingers trembling slightly. Maybe this was dangerous. But for the first time since she walked through the gilded doors of Wolf International, she didn't want to run away. She wanted to see what came next. Chapter 3. Late nights and open windows. The city never truly slept, but it had its quiet hours. It was nearly midnight when Eva found herself once again perched at the edge of the 99th floor boardroom table, shoes off beneath her chair, hair in a messy twist. Her screen glowed with the dim blue of strategy decks and pitch mock-ups, but her mind was spiraling elsewhere toward the man across the room. Lucas Wolfe stood at the far glass wall, sleeves rolled to his elbows, one hand in his pocket, the other cradling a tumbler of something amber. His gaze wasn't on her. It was fixed out the window, as if he were scanning the skyline for answers only height could offer. Eva cleared her throat. He didn't move. Is this what CEOs do at midnight? She asked softly. Stare down the empire they built until it blinks? Lucas smiled faintly, still watching the city. No, he said. Most of them are asleep in penthouses, dreaming of mergers and mistresses. And you? I paint. She blinked. You haven't painted since last Friday. His eyes flicked to her. You've been counting? More like noticing. Lucas turned then, walking toward a low cabinet built into the wall. He opened it to reveal a leather-bound portfolio and a small case of brushes, oil sticks, and thick white sketch paper. Quietly, he spread the tools across the table beside her laptop. I haven't touched this set in 3 months, he murmured. Why now? He didn't answer with words. Instead, he sat beside her, not across, not apart, and began to sketch. His strokes were strong, deliberate, lines that started rigid, then loosened as the figure took form. A woman. Long neck. Shoulders tipped back, hair falling forward in waves. Eva looked closer. Is that? You, Lucas said, not looking up. From the first day, when you apologized and tried to clean my shirt with a napkin, she let out a surprised breath. I looked like a drowned squirrel. No, he said, softer. You looked brave. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick with something else: recognition, perhaps, or the danger of being truly seen. Eva shifted slightly, pulse fluttering under her skin. You shouldn't do that. Drive you? No. Make it feel like this. His hand paused. Like what? Like this glass room isn't glass anymore. Like it's warm, human, unsafe. Lucas set the pencil down, turned to face her fully. Maybe that's what it is. Unsafe. For a moment, Ava didn't breathe. She wasn't sure if she was about to stand up or fall forward. But before either could happen, a soft ding interrupted them, the elevator arriving just down the hall. Lucas stood immediately, shoulders back. Expression shuddered. Stay here, he said. The way he said it wasn't commanding. It was protective. Ava watched him disappear into the corridor. She didn't mean to eavesdrop. Not really. But when she heard the clipped voice echo through the glass walls, she couldn't help it. You didn't answer my call. Lucas. Emilia Roth. Ava's breath caught. That voice was familiar from interviews, quarterly calls, and infamously sharp press quotes. It was poised and razor-edged like lipstick drawn in blood. I was working, Lucas replied coolly. At midnight? Since when did you start monitoring my hours? Emilia laughed, a sound without warmth. Since you started mentoring interns like they're your little charity projects. A pause. Ava shrank closer to the wall. She's not your business, Lucas said, voice low. She's a risk, Emilia snapped. You think I don't see it? The late nights, the way you look at her. She's already a liability. It's only a matter of time before someone else sees it too. A beat. Then, you don't get to police my decisions anymore. No, Emilia said slowly. But I built this company with you. I won't watch it burn just because you're trying to remember what it feels like to care. A door closed with a soft click. The conversation was over. Lucas returned a few minutes later, his face carved in stone. Ava stood. I should go. You heard. I didn't mean to. But yes. He said nothing for a long while. Then he moved back to the table and picked up the sketch, her sketch. With a careful hand, he tore it in two. Ava flinched. Lucas. Go home, Ava. But... He didn't raise his voice. Didn't frown. He simply looked at her with an expression so guarded it made her ache. This, he said, gesturing vaguely between them, can't bleed into the open. Not yet. She nodded slowly. But inside, something was unraveling. Something she couldn't tape back together with professionalism or distance. She left the boardroom without another word. Lucas didn't follow, and the city outside kept glowing bright, merciless, and wide awake. The ride down felt colder than the elevator was programmed to be. Ava stood near the mirrored panel, arms wrapped around herself. Her reflection looked wrong, too still, too quiet. Gone was the bright-eyed intern who'd dared to pitch rebrands to billionaires. In her place stood a woman who'd tasted something intimate, then been told to forget it. Not yet. That's what he'd said. Not never, but not now. And somehow, that made it worse. By the time she reached the lobby, rain was falling in earnest. She didn't have an umbrella. She let the drops soak her as she crossed Madison Avenue, her heels loud on wet pavement, mascara threatening to betray her. She didn't cry, but her chest felt hollow, like something important had been scooped out. The weekend passed in a blur of responsibilities. Grocery lists. Her sister Olivia's tutoring session. Her brother's soccer game. Rent payments stacked like threats on her kitchen counter. Ava buried herself in the noise of real life, anything to dull the sharp ache Lucas had left behind. But by Monday morning, she was back inside Wolf International's marble and glass kingdom, chin high, face neutral. No one could know that the man behind the empire had sketched her like a muse, then silenced her like a secret. Her inbox overflowed. The brand modernization initiative had been escalated. She was on the official team now, sitting in on meetings with mid-level execs who didn't know whether to treat her like a peer or a coffee runner. She let them fumble. Let them underestimate her. Let them not see. Lucas didn't show for any of the morning meetings. No check-ins. No messages. By noon, Ava had nearly convinced herself it had all been in her head that his glances meant nothing. His sketch was meaningless. His silence deserved. Then came the post-lunch calendar ping. Private review, conference room 99G. 7 p.m. LW plus AM only. She stared at the notification for a full minute before accepting. When she arrived that evening, the city was dressed in pink gold, the final flush of sun casting honeyed shadows across the skyline. Conference room 99G was smaller than the boardroom, but still encased in glass. One table, 2 chairs, a bottle of wine already open on the side credenza. Lucas stood at the window, hands in his pockets again. Always that same posture, like the world was something he had to bear. He didn't turn as she entered. "I don't do apologies well," he said. "That makes 2 of us." He turned to face her then, and Ava wasn't prepared for the shift in him. His face was softer tonight. Less CEO, more man. A man who looked like he'd spent the weekend in his own version of exile. "I pushed you away because I needed to," he said quietly. "Not because I wanted to." She folded her arms. "There's a difference?" He stepped closer. Yes. She could smell his cologne now, amber and sage, and something distinctly male. It made her stomach twist. "I meant what I said last week," Lucas continued. "You're dangerous. Not because you're reckless, but because I stop thinking like a businessman when you're in the room." Ava's mouth went dry. "That's not fair. It's not safe," he corrected. She stared at him. "Then why ask me to come back tonight?" He moved to the table, opened a folder, and slid it across to her. "Because I want you to present at the Manhattan Partners Summit. You'll lead with the new digital experience campaign. It's yours." Ava's hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder. Her name was printed in bold at the top. Lead strategist, Ava Morales. "Lucas, this isn't just mentorship. This is a test," he said, "but not the kind you think. I want the world to see what I already do." She met his eyes. They were no longer guarded. They were on fire. "And what do you see?" she asked, voice low. He stepped closer. Too close. The air between them sparked. "I see someone who reminds me that I'm not just a name on the door." She swallowed. "You said we couldn't let this bleed into the open." He nodded. "And I meant it. Then what are we doing right now?" Lucas's voice dropped an octave. "What we've been doing since you spilled that coffee. Pretending we're not already in it." A beat passed. Then she reached out, slow and deliberate, and touched the hem of his sleeve. He didn't move away. And when he kissed her, it wasn't sudden. It was inevitable. Soft. Tentativa at first. Then hungrier. His hands found her waist, her spine, the back of her neck. Her fingers tangled in his shirt like they needed anchoring. When they broke apart, the world felt thinner. "We're going to regret this," she whispered. "Probably," he murmured against her temple. "But not tonight." Later, as she stood at the elevator, lips still tingling, heart still stumbling, Ava felt it again, that sense that she was standing on the edge of something enormous. But for once, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to jump. Chapter 4. The Glass Cage. Ava woke up before her alarm, breath caught between exhaustion and adrenaline. Her lips still tingled from Lucas's kiss. Her hand still remembered the shape of his shoulders, the weight of his touch. But her mind was a different story. It spun. The morning light through her apartment blinds felt colder somehow, diffused by dread. She rolled out of bed, careful not to wake Olivia, and tried to center herself with coffee, mascara, and denial. Whatever that moment had been, sweet, hungry, illicit, it had happened in the privacy of glass walls. And now the sun was up, and the rules of the world had returned. The unspoken rule, especially. Lucas Wolf doesn't get involved. Not with interns. Not with anyone. Not like that. And yet, by the time she reached the office, the building buzzed with motion. Meetings churned. Phones rang. The air smelled like espresso and power. Ava's badge beeped as she entered the 97th floor, where the brand team huddled like overcaffeinated wolves. "Ava," said Theo, the digital strategist, waving her down. "Lucas requested you sit in on the brand elevation sync." You'll be presenting part of the campaign story. Eva blinked. I wasn't scheduled for that one. You are now, he said, his smile lopsided with curiosity. Guess the big guy likes your style. That word likes slid too close to truth. She nodded and moved past, heart thumping against her ribs like it wanted out. Up on the 99th floor, the boardroom was already filling. Executives in tailored suits, assistants with iPads and watchful eyes. Eva stood near the edge of the room, resisting the pull to look for him. And then he entered. Lucas strode in like a storm wrapped in silk charcoal gray suit, black shirt, no tie. Controlled. Lethal in his composure. His eyes swept the room, never once landing on her. But Eva saw it. The tick in his jaw. The restraint. She kept her expression neutral. Her posture professional. Still, heat crept up her neck like a secret trying to rise. When it was her turn to speak, she did it cleanly, crisp insights, clear slides, persuasive flow. No cracks. No stumbles. Just business. Except when their eyes met briefly. Just once it hit like a power surge through her spine. After the meeting, Lucas nodded once and left the room without a word. Ava exhaled. He was drawing the lines again, and she was already walking their edge. By Wednesday, the office gossip had begun to shift. Little things. Glances. Murmurs. She noticed it first when two assistants stopped talking as she passed. Then in the way Amelia Roth poised, perfect Amelia looked at her across the open workspace, eyes cool as diamonds, mouth curled at the edge. It was the way predators smile. Eva tried to ignore it, tried to lose herself in numbers. Deadlines, slide decks, but the tension wrapped tighter around her ribs each hour. Then came the email from Amelia Roth. To Aba Morales. Subject: Informal check. In. Time: Thursday. 4:30 p.m. Office. 98. R. Short. Sharp. Bloodless. When Eva entered the office, Amelia was standing beside the window, back straight, dress a crisp navy sheath that matched her demeanor. Her hair was impossibly sleek. Her heels glinted like knives. Eva, she said, turning slowly. Sit. Eva obeyed, spine taut. I wanted to connect, Amelia began, voice smooth as lacquer, before your summit presentation. I hear Lucas has taken a particular interest in your growth. I've been lucky to have his mentorship, Eva replied, careful. Amelia smiled a sharp, knowing thing. You're bright. Sharp. But let me be clear about something. She stepped closer. This company rewards discipline, not distraction. Ava met her gaze, blood pounding. I haven't been distracted. No, Amelia said. But he is. Ava's stomach flipped. I've known Lucas for over a decade, Amelia continued. I've helped him build this company from steel and silence. I know the pressure he's under. The weight of appearances. Of scandal. A beat. You're not the first, but you should be the last. Ava's breath caught. Excuse me? You heard me. Amelia's voice dropped an octave. I'm warning you, because he won't. Luca si potentiel. But he's blind to consequences. And trust me when this ends. And it will, he won't be the one asked to leave quietly. The message was clear. Step out, or be shoved out. Ava stood slowly. Are we done here? Emilia tilted her head. For now. Ava walked out without looking back. Her hands were trembling. But not from fear. From fury. The elevator doors closed behind Ava, swallowing the image of Amelia Roth in a cloud of venomous perfume and perfectly staged power. Ava's fingers gripped the brass railing inside the lift as the numbers descended. Joshaba. Joshati. Joshalo. Her pulse wouldn't slow. Her breath came in uneven bursts. Not the first, but the last. Those words echoed like shards in her skull. Had there been others? Was she just another passing intrigue to a man like Lucas Wolfe, sharp one moment, silent the next, kissing her like she mattered, then walking away like she didn't? She shook her head, as if motion could dislodge the doubt. No. Lucas was many things: brutal, unreadable, impossible, but he wasn't false. That kiss had meant something. The way he looked at her, when no one else was watching, it meant something. Still, she couldn't deny what Amelia had said. That kind of scrutiny, the undercurrent of whispered eyes and snapping jaws, was real. She could feel it rising around her, subtle as fog, sharp as glass. And glass walls had a way of magnifying every flaw. By the end of the day, Ava stayed late not because of extra work, but because she couldn't bear to go home with Amelia's voice ringing in her head. The office was quiet, the night pressing against the windows. Only the cleaning staff and a few junior analysts remained, scattered like ghosts across glowing desks. Ava wandered toward the executive floor, unsure why her feet took her there. She told herself it was to drop off a printed agenda. But she knew it was more than that. Lucas's door was cracked open. She hovered for a moment, then knocked lightly. He looked up from his desk, shirt sleeves rolled, collar loosened. He looked tired. Human. "Ava," he said, his voice gentler than she expected. "Come in." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then, "Amelia called me into her office today," Ava said, carefully watching his reaction. Lucas' jaw tensed. "She warned me about us." A beat. "What did she say?" he asked, low. "That I'm a distraction. That I'll be replaced when this gets inconvenient." Her voice caught. "That I'm not the first." Lucas stood slowly, pushing his chair back, expression unreadable. "That's not true," he said. "Any of it." She raised her chin, resisting the urge to fold into his certainty. "Then why does she think it is? Why does everyone act like we're some secret affair hiding behind elevator glass? Because they want to believe power is clean, linear, predictable." He stepped closer, hands clenched. "But I've built every inch of this empire on instinct, on seeing through facades. I saw you, Ava. And that changes things. But what does it change?" Her voice cracked now, vulnerable and raw. "Am I just another deviation in your controlled life? Another sketch you rip in half the moment it gets too real?" Lucas flinched visibly. He remembered the torn drawing, the night he'd pushed her away. "No," he said softly. "That was a mistake. I was afraid." She looked at him, eyes shining. "And now?" He didn't answer with words. He walked to her, closed the space between them, placed one hand at her jaw, the other on her waist, and kissed her again. But this kiss wasn't hungry. It was slow, lingering, a promise instead of a demand. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't care what Amelia thinks," he said. "I don't care what they whisper. I will not let them define what this is." Ava's heart pounded. "You can't protect me from everything," she whispered. "No," he said, "but I can stand beside you. That's how we start." She leaned into him, eyes closing for just a second. And for that one moment, there were no walls, no empire, no watchful eyes, just two people, standing inside a cage they were beginning to break open together. The next morning, Ava walked into Wolf International different. Same shoes, same ID badge, same tote slung over her shoulder. But she was no longer shrinking. She was done being someone's whispered mistake. She had earned her place here. Her campaign was being used. Her data drove meetings. And whether or not she and Lucas Wolf ever survived the fire, they had sparked it. Together. But fire, as she'd soon learn, could burn from more than one direction. And in the shadows of Wolf International's polished empire, Amelia Roth was already moving her pieces. Click by click. Leak by leak. She wasn't finished. Not yet. Chapter 5. Exposure. The day began with silence. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that waits. By 8:03 a.m., Ava was already seated in the 99th floor conference lounge, reviewing the summit presentation deck for the 10th time. Her fingers trembled slightly as they hovered over the trackpad, though she didn't notice. Her mind buzzed, not with nerves, but with memory. Lucas's kiss. His words. The promise he'd made in the hush of his office, that they wouldn't hide, not anymore. For the first time, Ava believed it could be real. by 8:27 a.m. That belief cracked. She was mid-sentence in a practice run when Theo burst through the glass door, his face pale, eyes wide behind his tortoiseshell glasses. "Ava," he said, breathless, "you need to see this." She rose slowly. "What is it?" Theo glanced behind her, lowered his voice. "Someone leaked photos." Her stomach twisted. "Photos of what?" He handed her his phone. There, splashed across a gossip site's sleek black and gold homepage, was her face, lips parted, eyes half closed, Lucas's hand tangled in her hair. A kiss intimate, unmistakable, framed by the glass walls of a boardroom high above New York City. Wolf CEO locks lips with intern, power and privilege at the pinnacle of real estate. Ava stared at it for too long. The edges of the screen blurred. The world narrowed. Her mouth went dry. She barely registered Theo's soft, awkward attempt to comfort her. "We don't know where it came from. Could have been a cleaning staff member. Or—" She handed him the phone back, hands shaking. "How many people have seen it? It's trending on LinkedIn now. The business blogs picked it up. Reddit's already dissecting the company code of conduct." The blood roared in her ears. She backed out of the lounge and into the hallway, air suddenly too thin. Glass. It had always been glass. They hadn't been careful. They'd believed in the illusion of privacy, in the safety of silence. But the 99th floor saw everything, reflected everything. Someone had been watching, waiting. And now, the cost of wanting more than permission was being paid in full. Lucas found her minutes later, pacing the far end of the corridor with a paper cup of water in one hand and a death grip on her phone in the other. "I saw it," he said, voice low but steady. Ava turned to him slowly. "Is this where you tell me it'll blow over?" He didn't lie. "No," Lucas said. "It won't." She nodded, once. "Then what now?" "We do damage control. Together." But Ava stepped back. "Do we?" His jaw tightened. "You don't believe I meant what I said." "I don't know what to believe, Lucas. People are whispering. Investors are probably calling your board. And I'm just the intern who crossed a line." Lucas stepped forward. "You didn't cross anything. I invited you here." "Yes, but they won't see it that way. They'll say I seduced the boss, used my body to get ahead." "I won't let them," he said firmly. "You can't stop the internet." "No. But I can make it very clear where I stand." She searched his face, and for a moment she almost said, "Then tell them now. Tell them it's real." But her throat closed. Something inside her still curled away from the fire, afraid to be consumed. By noon, the company was in lockdown mode. PR scrambled to prepare a holding statement. Legal advised silence. HR circulated a mandatory code of conduct refresher email, thinly veiled and heavily emphasized. Ava didn't attend the afternoon meetings. She sat at her desk on the 97th floor, staring at her keyboard, every keystroke swallowed by the noise around her. She felt peeled open, exposed in every direction. The room stared at her, even when backs were turned. It was only when Amelia passed her desk, heels sharp, perfume unmistakable, that Ava knew. Their eyes met. Amelia smiled. Just slightly. Ava felt the chill rise. That evening, she sat in the back of a cab, watching the city blur past in gold and rain. She didn't go home. She went to the river, to a quiet bench on the east side promenade, where the wind tasted like brine and asphalt. Lucas called. She didn't answer. She let it go to voicemail. Then she listened to it twice. "Ava, I'm sorry. I should have protected this better. Protected you. I'm working on it, but I need time. The board is demanding answers. I'll fix this. Please trust me." But trust wasn't a bridge, it was glass. And once cracked, it bore the weight of neither silence nor love. The next morning, Ava handed in her resignation. No theatrics. No note scribbled in fury or heartbreak. Just a simple letter, typed and signed, delivered in a cream envelope to Lucas Wolf's executive assistant at 8:15 a.m. She didn't wait to see his reaction. She couldn't. If she looked back, she'd unravel, and there was no space left for weakness. The office hummed as usual, oblivious to what that envelope contained, or pretending to be. The air smelled like expensive toner and barely hidden curiosity. Ava felt it on her skin, the quiet shock of her departure spreading like ripples in a corporate pond. Theo was the first to find her. "You're quitting?" he asked, stunned. "Ava, you've got a summit keynote in 2 weeks. You were the face of the campaign." "I was never the face," she said gently. "Just a shadow. Now they get to fill the light with someone else." He looked pained. "Is this because of the leak? Because of Lucas?" Her silence was answer enough. Theo lowered his voice. "You're not just some intern, you know. Everyone saw your work. People listened when you talked. You earned your seat." Ava smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "And now I'm giving it back before they push me off the table." Lucas didn't come looking for her. Not that day. Not the next. The silence screamed louder than any scandal. She packed up her things in the dull glow of Friday afternoon, her intern badge, her notebooks, the half-used tube of lipstick she kept in her desk drawer like a talisman. She paused for a moment at the doorway, taking one last look at the empire she had briefly stepped inside. Wolf International, glittering and cold. A palace of power and glass. She had survived it. But it had also wounded her in ways she couldn't yet articulate. She didn't go straight home. She wandered the High Line instead. The late September wind pushing through her coat sleeves. Below her, the city pulsed cars honking, trains rushing, strangers brushing shoulders with ghosts. Above her, the sky held the faint pink hue of something unfinished. Her phone buzzed twice. "Lucas Wolf. Please talk to me. You leaving won't change what I feel." She stared at the words. A week ago, she would have folded into them. Now, she wasn't sure if they were a promise or a trap. That night, she dreamed of the boardroom of glass shattering in slow motion, of paint dripping from Lucas's hands onto marble floors. She stood across from him, but he couldn't see her. He kept sketching on nothing, drawing outlines that vanished the moment they were born. She woke with the taste of absence in her mouth. On Sunday evening, her phone buzzed again. Another message, but not from Lucas. This time, it was from an anonymous number with a single link, no subject, no warning. Ava opened it instinctively, and the breath left her body. It was a security log, a backdated timestamp, a downloaded file from Wolf International's private surveillance archive. The name tied to the access? E. Roth. Her stomach twisted. Amelia. Ava's heart pounded as the truth crashed down. She didn't just suspect now. She knew. Amelia had leaked the photos, or at the very least, accessed them. Ava stared at the screen, fingers trembling. And then, finally, after days of silence, she made the call. Lucas answered on the first ring. "Ava? I know who did it," she said. "I have proof." It was Amelia. Silence. Then, "Where are you?" She gave him her address. He didn't ask permission. He simply said, "I'm coming." 27 minutes later, he was at her apartment door. No driver, no security, just Lucas in a navy coat, rain in his hair, and a look in his eyes that made her chest ache. She let him in. He barely crossed the threshold before he took her hand. "I didn't come sooner because I thought if I waited, maybe you'd be safer. Maybe the noise would die down and I could fix it quietly." "You should have come anyway," she said softly. "I know." He took her phone, studied the file. His mouth was a hard line. "This is enough." "She's finished." But Ava shook her head. "That's not enough for me, Lucas." He looked up. "Then what is?" She exhaled, voice steady now. "The truth. In the open. No more hiding. No more damage control. If you want me beside you, you do it publicly. Otherwise, I walk away, and this time, it's forever." A long pause. Lucas Wolf, once silent titan, once unshakable, nodded. "I'll tell them all," he said. "He'll tell everyone." Chapter 6. The Resignation. Wolf International pulsed with the illusion of calm. On Monday morning, the executive floor smelled of orchids and order. Employees moved through the glass corridors with practiced elegance, as if their steps alone could steady the scandal whispering beneath every polished surface. But beneath the calm, something cracked. Because behind closed doors, Lucas Wolf was preparing for war. He stood alone in his office, sleeves rolled, watching the city spread like a fractured mirror beyond the glass. In his hand was the security log Ava had sent him, Emilia's betrayal staring back in bold, undeniable font. She hadn't just hurt Ava. She had sabotaged his trust. His company. Him. He hit the intercom button. Diana. Call an executive session. All board members. Noon sharp. Emilia included. Yes, Mr. Wolfe. His voice had never sounded so cold. Down on the 97th floor, Ava was saying goodbye. The HR rep had offered a clean exit non-disclosure agreement, glowing reference, signed off by legal, but Ava hadn't touched the paperwork yet. She stared at the document in front of her. Voluntary termination, Ava Morales. Reason, personal undisclosed. The word undisclosed felt like a lie, because the reason was all too clear. She'd fallen for a man she shouldn't have, been exposed by a woman who hated her, and left behind a place where she'd proven herself more than once but never been allowed to fully belong. She tucked the form back into the envelope and stood. She wasn't sure if she'd submit it today. Something inside her still waited. For a reason to stay, for proof that this fight wasn't hers to wage alone. At noon sharp, the glass boardroom filled with tension, the full Wolf International board, 15 executives in sleek suits and well-practiced indifference, sat in silence as Lucas entered. He moved with precision controlled, unreadable, but there was a storm behind his eyes. Emilia sat at the far end, composed in a dove-gray suit, her lips painted the color of polished steel. She didn't blink when Lucas took his seat. Before we begin, Lucas said, I'd like to address the security breach that occurred last week. Several board members exchanged glances. Lucas tapped his tablet. The screen on the wall came alive, flashing the security access log, the leaked photo watermark, the corresponding server timestamp, and then the name. E. Roth. A sharp breath was drawn at the table's edge. Lucas's voice remained calm. This document confirms that the image used in the press leak was accessed and exported from our internal surveillance archive using Emilia Roth's credentials, without authorization, without disclosure. Emilia tilted her head slightly. That's a bold accusation. It's a fact, Lucas said. The security team cross-verified metadata, export timestamps, and IP logs. It's you. One of the senior VPs, Rashid Patel, cleared his throat. Emilia, do you deny this? She smiled, the corners of her mouth like knives. I don't deny accessing the footage. But I didn't leak it. That's not your defense, Lucas said. It's your confession. Emilia shrugged. I did what needed to be done. You were compromised, Lucas. You were letting emotion dictate policy. The intern was a liability. She was a person, he snapped, his composure breaking for the first time. And you exploited her. The room fell silent again. Lucas stood. Effective immediately, Emilia Roth is relieved of her position as Chief Operating Officer. Legal will finalize your exit package. Security will escort you downstairs. Emilia rose slowly, as though she had all the time in the world. You're choosing her over me, she said. Over what we built. I'm choosing what's right, he said. She moved toward the door, pausing just before it opened. One day, she said, turning to face him, you'll realize she was the ruin you invited in. Lucas didn't flinch. I already did, he said, and I still chose her. The news hit the company like a controlled explosion. By mid-afternoon, Wolf's internal messaging platform was flooded with the announcement, Emilia Roth has stepped down. Lucas Wolf will serve as interim COO until a replacement is appointed. Officiel. Clean. Deceptive in its neatness. Ava read it from a cafe 2 blocks away, her untouched coffee going cold. Her heart pounded not just with vindication, but disbelief. He'd actually done it. She looked out at the city and tried to imagine him at his desk right now, fielding calls, answering questions, standing under the weight of scandal, and restructuring all while carrying the shadow of her. Her phone buzzed. Lucas. Come upstairs. Please. 99th floor. No more hiding. No more whispers. Ava stood, straightened her coat, and walked toward the tower. Ava stood once again in the elevator to the 99th floor, but this time, she wasn't trembling. The city rose behind her like a witness as the steel doors opened onto Wolf International's top level. The hallway ahead felt quieter than usual, like something had been stripped from the air. Emilia's absence was a wound, still bleeding behind the glass. Lucas's assistant gave her a soft nod. He's waiting. Ava entered his office. Lucas was standing at the window, his usual armor-tailored suit, composed posture looking worn in a way she hadn't seen before. The storm in his expression had passed, but the sky was still overcast in his eyes. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said. "You asked." He turned, met her gaze. "I fired her," he said. "The board knows. The company knows. Everyone knows." Ava nodded. "I saw. I told them the truth," Lucas continued. "About the photos. About the breach. And about you. A beat. You deserve that much." She walked slowly into the room, the weight of the moment pressing gently against her chest. "And what exactly did you say?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. He stepped toward her, his gaze never wavering. "I told them that this company's future was built by bold people, that I refused to punish someone for being more than their title, and that I was no longer interested in living a life that required hiding the things I care about most." Ava inhaled, the ache in her chest tightening, then easing. "They'll keep whispering," she said. "Let them," he replied. "The truth's louder." He walked to his desk and picked up a slim folder. "Your resignation letter. I never filed it." She stared at it. He extended it toward her. "Because I didn't want to lose you. Not to them. Not to fear. And not to me." Her fingers touched the folder but didn't take it. "Lucas," she said, voice shaking just enough to matter, "I need to know something. Anything. If the leak hadn't happened, if no one ever found out, would you have chosen me anyway? Or was I only worth the risk? Once the damage was done." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked around the desk, stopping only when he was close enough to see her doubt reflected in his eyes. "I've wanted to choose you since the moment you ruined my suit." That pulled a soft, surprised laugh from her, wet with emotion. He cupped her cheek. "But I didn't know how to be the man who deserved to." Ava leaned into his hand, her body remembering every moment she'd stood this close, every moment she'd pretended they weren't already more than they were allowed to be. "You don't get to keep me hidden," she whispered. "I don't want to," he said. "I want to build something. With you. And I want to start here." He stepped back and opened a drawer. From it, he pulled a slim, navy blue envelope. Ava blinked. "What is that?" Lucas opened it and held out the contents, a printed promotion letter, signed and sealed. "Ava Morales, Director of Emerging Brand Strategy." Her mouth parted. "This isn't pity," he said. "It's recognition. You were already doing the job. Now you'll have the title, and the salary, and the office. A pause. If you'll stay." Her heart climbed into her throat. He handed her a keycard silver, smooth, embossed with her name. "You can say no," Lucas added. "Softer now." "I'll understand." She stared at the card, at the signature, at her own name written like it belonged in this world. Then she met his gaze. "I'll stay," she said. "But not because you fought for me." His brow furrowed slightly. "I'll stay," she repeated, "because I fought for myself. And I won." Lucas's smile was slow, genuine, laced with something deeper than pride. "Good," he said. "That's the version of you I fell for." She stepped forward, closed the space between them, and kissed him not because it was forbidden, not because it was secret, but because it was right. The city beyond the glass watched them silently. No longer a cage, now a cathedral. Chapter 7. Brushstrokes and Bruises. Lucas didn't paint for a week. The brushes sat untouched on the low shelf in his penthouse, the oils sealed, the canvases wrapped in their protective skins like secrets too raw to show. After Emilia's departure and Ava's return, he had expected something inside him to settle, but instead, the quiet had deepened. The kind of quiet that didn't soothe it echoed. He stood in his living room at 2 a.m, barefoot on cool hardwood. The city glowing in the distance. A half-empty glass of bourbon sat untouched on the windowsill. His reflection stared back from the glass-shadowed eyes, jaw clenched, sleeves rolled halfway up. Still composed, still precise, but inside, he was unraveling by degrees. It wasn't regret. It was reckoning. Because for the first time in years, Lucas Wolfe had made a choice that wasn't calculated for benefit or brand. He had chosen someone, not for what she could do, but for who she was, and that terrified him. Ava spent her first full week as Director of Emerging Brand Strategy in a state of surreal momentum. New office. New pay grade. A new badge that made people look twice when she walked into the room. But underneath the crisp suits and tighter bun, Ava still felt like she was walking a tightrope, suspended between dream and disaster. There were looks. Of course, there were looks. From legacy executives who couldn't fathom how an intern had vaulted past them in 6 weeks. From PR reps who whispered damage control behind designer lattes. From the assistants who still called her sweetheart like it was a compliment, she let them whisper. What they didn't see was the strategy brief she rewrote in 48 hours, or the data visualization suite she redesigned to land the attention of Wolfe's West Coast team. They didn't see the 1 a.m. emails, or the way Lucas leaned back in meetings and listened when she spoke. They didn't need to. Ava hadn't climbed her way up to be understood. She had climbed to be undeniable. But as the week ended, she noticed something. Lucas was quieter. He wasn't distant exactly, but different. Still present in meetings, still sharp, but there was a weight to him she couldn't name. A shadow at the edges of his words. Something bruised in the stillness of his gaze when he thought no one was watching. She found him late Friday evening, alone in his private conference suite. Lights dimmed, sleeves rolled. A blank canvas stretched on the easel near the window. Ava stepped inside without knocking. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten how to hold a brush," she said gently. Lucas turned, caught between surprise and something heavier. "I've been busy." She crossed the room, pausing beside the untouched paints. "Busy isn't the same as avoiding," she said softly. He didn't answer. Ava reached for one of the brushes, held it out to him like a challenge. "What are you afraid you'll see if you start again?" Lucas's jaw worked. "That the version of me who used to paint is gone. Then paint the one who's here now." Silence stretched, and then slowly he took the brush from her fingers. The way his hand curled around it was hesitant at first, as if unsure of its own shape. Then he dipped it in a quiet black and made the first stroke across canvas. A single line. Then another. It wasn't a figure or a face. It was motion. Chaos. Sharp angles and jagged emotion. Pain and freedom, living side by side. Ava watched him work, her breath catching as his movements grew more confident, more unrestrained. Paint bled across the canvas like memory, like confession. He didn't speak, but his body did. When he finally stepped back, sweat dotted his temples. His shirt was speckled with oil, his hands stained with blue and ochre. Ava stepped beside him, staring at the emerging image. It was abstract, but she saw it. 2 figures, back to back, tethered by a thread of gold, the city beneath them, glass above, and a storm swirling just beyond reach. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Lucas looked at her, not just glanced, but looked. "I don't know who I am when I'm not building something," he said. "The company, the control. It's all I've ever known." She reached out, her fingers brushing his stained wrist. "Then build this," she said. "Us. Not for headlines. Not for war. Just because it's yours." He didn't kiss her. Not yet. But the look in his eyes said he might never stop if he started now. The next morning, Lucas woke up to streaks of dried paint still on his forearms and the smell of rain against the glass. He hadn't slept much, but something in his chest had loosened, as if the act of putting color to canvas rage to motion had drawn out a piece of himself he hadn't touched in years. Something ungoverned. Something honest. Ava had stayed until midnight, curled up on the leather couch in his suite, while he painted in near silence. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Something stronger than desire had passed between them, something like understanding. It unnerved him more than passion ever had. By noon, he was back in the office. Meetings stacked, reports waiting. But his focus kept slipping. He couldn't stop thinking about the gold line on that canvas, the thread between the two figures. Tethered. Distant. Enduring. Ava was becoming more than the storm that had upended his control. She was becoming a constant. And that terrified him. Downstairs, Ava sat in her new corner office, a clean glass cube on the 92nd floor, overlooking Bryant Park. Her new assistant, Mara, had just dropped off a stack of design proposals for Wolf's Gen Z outreach pilot. She barely registered them. Her eyes were on the email that had just pinged into her inbox. Subject: Exclusive. Lucas Wolf's intern romance. Is Wolf International built on seduction? From Press Alert, Gossip Watch, NY. Attached were new photos. Not the old kiss. These were taken from a different angle, closer, more invasive. One was of her walking with Lucas after hours, their hands brushing. Another of them standing far too close on the sidewalk near her apartment. There was even one of her entering his car. The angle suggested someone had followed her. Ava's stomach dropped. This wasn't just scandal anymore. It was surveillance. Targeted. Deliberate. And someone still wanted her gone. She picked up the phone. Get me Lucas. He arrived 7 minutes later, fury cloaked in a suit. Where did they get these? He asked, eyes scanning the email Ava had forwarded to his device. I don't know, she said. But they weren't taken from inside the office. He shook his head. This is personal now. It already was. Lucas paced the length of her office, tension sharp in his frame. I can buy the outlet, he muttered. Bury the story. Redirect it. We'll release a human interest spin if I have to. But it won't stop. They want blood. Ava stood. Then give them something else. His eyes snapped to hers. I mean it, she continued. Let them publish it. Let them try. Because we're not hiding anymore. And the more we pretend this is a scandal, the more power we give them. Lucas studied her like she was speaking a language he hadn't dared to believe in. You want to go public? She nodded. On our terms. No PR veil. No faceless statements. A moment. Something real. He exhaled, slow and heavy. You'll be torn apart. I've been underestimated my whole life. They'll need sharper teeth. A silence stretched between them, heavy, electric. Then Lucas reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his phone, and typed something. A minute later, he looked up. We're announcing it at the Wolf Gala. Ava blinked. That's in 4 days. Exactly, he said. Let them see us in glass and gold. That night, Lucas painted again. Not because he was hiding, but because he was ready. He painted her. Not her face, not her body, but her force. Vivid streaks of red and rust and brilliant cobalt, all pulsing from the center of the canvas outward. She was storm and steel and light. She was what happened when fire refused to be extinguished. He didn't stop until dawn. In a tucked-away studio beneath the skyline, the man Lucas once was obsessive, contained, silent fell away. What emerged was someone else. Someone who knew bruises could become brushstrokes, and that vulnerability, once claimed, could become power. Chapter 8. A War in Silk. The Wolf Gala was less an event and more a declaration. Held annually at the top floor of the Monarch Tower, a private venue built by Wolf International itself, it was an evening woven from money, power, and exquisitely curated opulence. Gold chandeliers dripped like molten sunlight. Waitstaff floated in black silk. Strings played from a mezzanine above the champagne bar. It was the kind of night designed not for joy, but for spectacle. And tonight, Ava Morales walked directly into its glittering throat. Her dress was satin ink black, sleeveless, with a slit that whispered against her thigh as she moved. Her hair was swept into a low knot, a single tendril falling across one cheek. No javelry. Just presence. Quiet, clean power. People turned as she entered. Some out of surprise. Some out of recognition. Others with contempt, they didn't bother to mask. She ignored them all. Somewhere in this room, Lucas Wolf was preparing to burn the veil they had all hidden behind. But she wouldn't wait in the shadows until he did. She had come to stand beside him, not behind him. A server offered her champagne. She declined. She didn't want her hands occupied. Her weapon tonight was clarity. Meanwhile, across the room, Lucas Wolf adjusted his cufflinks beneath the skylight. His tuxedo was black velvet, tailored to lethal precision. But beneath the elegance, his body buzzed with something more primal resolve. This would be the most public moment of his career. Not a launch. Not a merger. A confession. A choice. And he was ready. He scanned the room and found her instantly. Ava, walking toward him with her chin high, her eyes sharp, and her entire soul wrapped in grace. The crowd parted slightly as she passed, the way it always does for hurricanes that wear heels. Lucas moved to meet her at the center of the room. "You're early," he murmured. "I'm not hiding," she replied. He offered his arm. She took it. And then, slowly, they ascended the 3 marble steps to the stage at the head of the ballroom. The murmurs began before he even tapped the microphone. The whispers crescendoed like strings being tuned too tightly. Anticipation wound through silk and wine and suspicion. Then Lucas spoke. "Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight at the Wolf International Gala." A pause. He could feel the weight of her at his side. He let it steady him. "This company was founded on vision, discipline, and legacy," he continued. "But none of that means anything if we aren't willing to evolve." Ava didn't look at him. She kept her gaze trained on the room, on the men and women who had judged her from behind, curated smiles and power-laced words. "Let them look now." Lucas exhaled once, then dropped the match. "Many of you have read headlines this past week. Some factual, many false. I won't waste time correcting gossip. Instead, I'll tell you the truth." He turned, gently took Ava's hand. "I'm in a relationship with Ava Morales. She's not a scandal. She's not a rumor. She's not my intern anymore because she outgrew that title within a week." A ripple passed through the ballroom. Lucas continued. "She's one of the brightest minds I've ever worked with. She's earned everything she's built here. And I refuse to be complicit in a culture that punishes women for being brilliant, visible, and bold." He squeezed her hand once, and Ava felt it in her ribs like a heartbeat. "I'm proud of her," Lucas said, "and I'm proud to be standing beside her tonight and beyond." Silence held. Then someone clapped. Then another. And then the sound grew not polite, not explosive, but steady. Real. Ava finally turned to Lucas. He looked lighter, as if the weight had shifted somewhere deeper than his shoulders. She leaned in. "You really said it." He smiled. It was time. And then, from the crowd, a familiar voice sliced through the applause. "Well, isn't that poetic?" Amelia Roth. Amelia Roth stepped forward like a queen who'd never accepted exile. Her dove-gray gown shimmered like moonlight, elegant, sharp, and deliberate. Even stripped of her title, she carried the weight of Wolf International in her bones. Her smile, though, was all blade. "I must say," she drawled, voice easily projecting to the far corners of the ballroom, "this has been quite the performance. Vulnerability, in velvet. Love, in prime time." Guests turned in unison, like petals caught in a bitter wind. Lucas' jaw tightened. "You weren't invited." "And yet, I'm always relevant," Amelia said, stepping closer. "I built this gala. I built the company. Forgive me for wanting to see how quickly it unravels." Ava didn't move, didn't flinch. She simply met Amelia's gaze, steady and unshaken. "What do you want?" "Oh, nothing," Amelia said lightly. "Just to remind the room how quickly men fall in love with their reflections, and how easily girls who rise too fast burn." A small gasp somewhere to the right. A ripple of scandal. Lucas stepped forward. "That's enough." But Ava touched his wrist just once and moved past him. She faced Amelia directly now, not as an intern, not as a woman in the shadow of a CEO, but as someone who had earned her ground. "You can throw stones," Ava said, voice even, "but I built my place here with work you can't erase." You want people to think I slept my way into this company. But you know what? I stayed awake. I worked. I fought. And you? Her tone dropped, low and precise. You watched me from behind glass, too afraid to admit I'd already passed you. Amelia's mouth twitched. You really think you'll last? I don't need to last, Ava said. I need to matter. And I already do. Applause. Slow. Then building. A spotlight found Ava's face, and for the first time in her life, she didn't step out of it. She stood inside it. Lucas reached for her hand again, not possessive, not protective. Present. I believe we're done here, he said to the crowd, voice rich with finality. Security began to approach, discreet and polite. Emilia didn't fight. She simply smirked. You always did love your tragic muses, Lucas. Then she turned and walked away, her heels echoing like a closing chapter. Later that night, Ava and Lucas stepped out onto the empty terrace at the back of the Monarch Tower. Below, Manhattan pulsed with midnight energy. But up here, it was quiet. Lucas poured them each a glass of champagne from the reserve bottle stashed on the rooftop bar. Not for the crowd, just for them. You didn't have to let me speak, Ava said softly. You didn't need my permission, he replied. She smiled at that. Emilia won't go quietly, Ava warned. I don't want quiet, he said. I want truth, even if it roars. Ava leaned against the railing, the wind tugging gently at her dress. You know, she said after a pause, there was a moment, back when you first kissed me, where I thought, this can't possibly survive. Not with the rules, the glass, the eyes. Lucas stepped behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. And now? I don't care if it survives by anyone else's definition, she said. I only care that it's real. He turned her gently, kissed her once tender and certain. Then he murmured into her ear, the world can keep watching. I'm done hiding what I love. Somewhere inside the building, Wolf International's public image was being reshaped, but out on the terrace, it was just the two of them. No empire, no war, no glass, just Ava and Lucas. And a new beginning, made not from power but from choice. Chapter 9. The Gala. 3 days after the storm, the gala felt different. Not because the chandeliers sparkled less or the wine flowed slower, no. The room gleamed with the same curated perfection it always had. But this time, Ava wasn't entering it as a question mark. She was entering it as a statement. The true Wolf Gala, the public-facing, press-filled, high-society spectacle, was held at the Glass Hall in Tribeca, where every wall was a mirror and every step was a stage. Politicians, tech giants, old-money real estate empires brushing shoulders with new media tycoons. And somewhere in the middle of that glittering mass, Ava Morales, in silver satin, standing calmly on the edge of the hurricane. Her dress was unlike anything she'd ever worn, minimalist and sculpted, hugging the curves of a woman who no longer apologized for taking up space. Her hair was slicked into a twist that made her neck look longer. Her earrings barely brushed the skin when she turned her head. But it wasn't the gown or the lighting that made her radiant. It was conviction. Every camera that swung toward her captured it. That she was not a guest in someone else's empire. She was part of its architecture now. Lucas arrived fashionably, strategically late. He knew the press pool was waiting, flashes already pulsing through the glass like nervous electricity. But when he stepped out of the town car, his expression didn't waver. Sharp suit, open collar, pocket square folded to quiet perfection. But his calm, engineered, because the moment he saw her standing beside the Wolf International backdrop, speaking with a Forbes editor, her eyes scanning the crowd like she already owned it, he forgot every line he'd rehearsed. He didn't walk toward her. He moved with intention, the way only a man who had chosen to change his life would. And when their eyes met across the crowd, the room tilted. Ava turned to him slowly, and for just a second, the rest of the world flashes, whispers, champagne faded to grayscale. You're late, she said, as he reached her. You're perfect, he said, as if it were a greeting. A reporter stepped forward. Mr. Wolfe, Miss Morales, may we get a shot? Ava blinked once, then nodded, Lucas slipped his hand gently to her back, anchoring her in full view of the crowd. She stood tall. They didn't pose, they simply stood together. Present. Unflinching. When the camera shutter clicked, it wasn't a scandal anymore. It was history. Inside, the room pulsed with high-end tension. Diamonds, ambition, veiled commentary over oysters and legacy portfolios. Ava and Lucas mingled with grace. He introduced her not as my date, not as the strategist, but by name. Every time, every room. This is Ava Morales, Director of Emerging Brand Strategy. She's the reason we didn't lose Gen Z to co-working startups. Laughter. Tension broke like ice in whiskey. But behind every smile, Ava could still feel the quiet discomfort of an industry not used to powerful women rising without permission. At one point, a thin-lipped investor's wife leaned over her glass and asked, voice syrupy sweet, "And how long have you been with Wolf, dear?" Ava met her eyes. Long enough to change it. Near midnight, the speeches began. Lucas was last. He ascended the stage slowly, the microphone catching only the edge of his breath as the crowd hushed. Ava stood at the back of the room, heart thudding. She knew what he was about to do, but she didn't know how it would land. Lucas began simply. 5 years ago, Wolf International was at risk of becoming a legacy brand. Revered, but no longer relevant. A few nods. Agreement. A few smiles. Tonight, I stand here as a CEO who's made mistakes, who's taken risks, and who's learned that evolution doesn't begin in boardrooms. It begins in moments. He paused, and then his gaze found Ava across the room. I met someone who reminded me that the most dangerous thing we can do is let fear decide what we deserve. The room shifted. Some of you called it a scandal. I call it clarity. Because when you find someone who challenges you, who sharpens you, who sees your weaknesses and still chooses to stand beside you, you don't hide her. You elevate her. Gasps. A few audible whispers. Lucas smiled, unapologetically. So here's my announcement. Ava Morales will be leading our global rebrand initiative. Effective immediately. More gasps. And yes, he added, with quiet steel, I love her. Cameras flashed. But Ava didn't move. Not yet. She waited until the applause began halting at first, then building like a wave cracking through crystal formality. Then she stepped forward, not because he had claimed her, but because she was ready to claim herself. Ava crossed the ballroom slowly. Not toward Lucas. Not toward the spotlight. She walked to the center of the room, where the Wolf logo loomed behind her, where the press waited, phones raised, where every eye followed her like a spotlight aimed not at scandal but transformation. She turned to face the room. She hadn't planned to speak, but her heart had other plans. Thank you, she began. No microphone. No podium. Just voice. Strong. Steady. Some of you know me. Some of you think you do. The crowd stilled. I came here as an intern. I brought nothing with me but grit and ideas and the weight of 3 younger siblings who looked to me as proof that the world is breakable in all the right ways. She looked around, locking eyes with the older men who still hadn't clapped, the women who wore admiration like armor, the assistants who had once ignored her emails. You saw headlines, she continued. Photos. You saw a story crafted for clicks. A pause. But here's the story I'll tell instead. She stepped closer to the edge of the crowd, as if daring the silence to move. I earned my seat at this table not because I was attached to power, but because I understood it. Because I know what it means to speak softly in rooms where no one wants to hear your voice until you prove it's profitable. Murmurs now. Low, thoughtful. Lucas watched her. Breath shallow. Eyes fixed. She turned her gaze to him. Lucas didn't give me a career. He didn't hand me opportunity. He challenged me, pushed me, believed in me before I fully believed in myself. And yes, he loved me. A pose. Sharp with intention. And for the record, I loved him back long before I knew how dangerous it was. A ripple through the crowd. She smiled only slightly. We didn't fall in love in secret. We fell in love in glass. In boardrooms. On rooftops. In every impossible space, people said we weren't allowed to exist. Someone clapped. Then another. Then a swell. Ava stepped back into the crowd without fanfare. She didn't return to Lucas right away. She didn't need to. She had said what she came to say. On her own terms. Later, on the terrace, Lucas found her standing alone, her silver heels dangling from one hand. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She looked at him sideways. "Yes, I did." He stepped beside her, hands in his pockets. "You didn't just speak. You rewrote the narrative." "I didn't do it for PR," she said. "I did it because I want to be with you in the light. You already are." A pause. Then she smiled, teasingly. "Also, I figured the announcement deserved a proper mic drop." Lucas grinned. "A rare, unguarded thing. You outshined every speaker tonight, including me." She turned, placed a hand on his chest. "Next time, let's announce something simpler. Like a vacation," she said. "Or a sabbatical. Something where we don't set fire to social media." He caught her wrist gently, kissed her knuckles. "Agreed." Another pause. "Quieter now." "Sweeter." "You meant it?" she asked. "When you said it up there, that you loved me?" Lucas nodded, eyes soft and fierce. "I meant it the first day you talked back to me." She laughed. "The coffee." "No," he said. "Before that, when you stood your ground after ruining my suit. I'd never met someone who ruined something and made me grateful for it." She stepped into him then, chest to chest. "I love you too," she said, "even if you do wear obscenely expensive suits." He kissed her, this time, in full view, this time, not as scandal but truth. Below them, New York pulsed in light and movement. But up here, everything was still. Two people. No longer afraid. No longer hidden. Just real. Chapter 10. The 99th floor. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Ava stepped onto the 99th floor alone this time, but no longer uncertain. Her heels clicked over marble, each step echoing with quiet confidence. She passed the boardroom where it all began, where the scent of espresso and tension once wrapped around her like a noose. It felt smaller now, not because the room had changed, but because Lucas had asked her to meet him here. No context. Just a time. Just the floor where their story had been written in glass. In glances, in ruin and recovery. The sun was just beginning to set, casting molten light across the skyline. Shadows stretched long over the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city gleamed below, oblivious to the lives being rewritten above it. At the far end of the floor, Lucas stood with his back to her, dressed in black. His hands were behind his back, posture composed, but there was something electric in the stillness. As she approached, he turned and smiled. Not his public smile. Not the one sharpened by boardrooms and press junkets. This one was unguarded, delicate around the edges. A smile reserved only for her. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't come," he said. "I was beginning to think this was an elaborate meeting invite." He nodded toward the glass-walled boardroom behind them. "I thought it was fitting," he said. "The place where I tried to fire you with my eyes." Ava laughed, soft and warm. "You mean the place where I ruined your suit and almost my career?" "Same place," he said. "Very different ending." She moved beside him and saw it. The space had been transformed. The long table cleared. A single easel in the center, lit by the golden glow of sunset. Upon it, a painting. Her breath caught. It was her. Not in detail, but in essence. A silhouette in motion, arms open, hair flying, light streaking behind her like something untouchable. The figure stood above a city of shadowed glass, a thread of gold weaving between sky and steel. Ava stepped closer. "This is you," he finished. "Not the intern. Not the strategist. Not the woman they tried to bury in whispers. Just you." She looked back at him, eyes burning. "You brought me here to show me this?" He smiled again. "Not just that." From his pocket, he pulled out a small, dark velvet box. Ava froze. Lucas didn't kneel. He didn't need to. The way he looked at her bare, unshaken, was enough to fill the moment with gravity. "I didn't plan to love you," he said. "I didn't expect you to change me. But you did." Her heart thudded in her chest. "You made me want to be known. Not just respected. Known." He opened the box. Inside was a ring not ostentatious, but elegant. A marquise-cut diamond flanked by brushed gold bands, simple and breathtaking. "And now," he said, "I want to build more than empires. I want to build mornings. And mistakes. And years. With you." A pause. No suits. No PR. No glass between us. Ava stared at him, every moment of their story rushing back coffee stains and late-night sketches, betrayal and bravery, gala lights and rooftop kisses. She reached for his hand, her voice a whisper. "Say it again." Lucas stepped closer, eyes never leaving hers. "I love you." And just like that, she said yes without needing to speak it. She took the ring from the box herself and slid it onto her finger. It fit like it had been waiting for her. They didn't kiss right away. They just stood there, hand in hand, hearts beating in sync, the city stretching endlessly below them. Two people who had fallen in love at the highest floor and risen even higher. The 99th floor was still bathed in gold when Ava finally looked down at her hand. The ring caught the light like truth, clean, understated, permanent. Lucas watched her with a quiet reverence, as if memorizing the image of her standing there, radiant and fierce, the city glowing at her back. "You didn't ask what came next," he said gently. She looked up at him. "I don't need to." But Lucas took a deep breath, and for the first time in his life, spoke from a place beyond strategy or control. "I want a life with you that doesn't need justifying. Not to the press. Not to the board. Not even to ourselves." He stepped beside her at the glass wall, their reflections merging in the window. "I want to build something with your fingerprints all over it," he continued. "A company that sees people, not titles. A brand that feels a legacy not made from names on towers, but from lives made better by what we create." Ava's chest tightened. "Lucas, I've drafted a new division," he said. "Wolf Impact, Community Design, Affordable Housing, Cultural Partnerships. You lead it." She blinked. "Me? Not because you're my fiancé." A small smile. "Because you're the future of everything I forgot to believe in." Tears stung the backs of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Not yet. You're not giving me this," she whispered. "You're trusting me with it." Lucas nodded. "That's what love is, isn't it? Not power, not possession, just the right kind of risk." She smiled then, wide, real, unafraid. "I'll take it," she said. "All of it." Later that night, they sat together on the rooftop balcony of Lucas's apartment. No speeches. No cameras. Just wind, wine, and silence soft as linen. Ava curled into him, barefoot now, her heels kicked off beside the lounger. The ring glinted in the low light. "I used to think love was about holding on," she said quietly. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And now? Now I think it's about letting go. Of fear. Of control. Of the version of yourself that was built to survive, not live." Lucas leaned down and kissed her slow and certain. When they pulled apart, the skyline shimmered below them like a canvas still being painted. "I've been a fortress for a long time," he murmured. Ava smiled into his shoulder. "Then let's make it a home." 1 year later. The new Wolf Impact headquarters opened in Brooklyn, red brick and glass, art installations inside the lobby curated by local students, walls filled with color and community instead of marble and silence. Ava Morales stood at the center of it all, wearing a blazer 2 shades too bold for corporate tradition and a smile wide enough to rewrite policy. Lucas stood beside her, fingers intertwined with hers, sleeves rolled like he used to when he painted, no longer hiding the man behind the title. They'd spent the year traveling, building, healing. Not perfect but real. They still argued, still challenged each other, still made love like the city might collapse around them, and they had only minutes to feel everything. But they were no longer surviving their story. They were writing it. And on the wall of Ava's office on the 9th floor of the new building, not the 99th, hung the painting, the one with 2 figures tethered by gold, surrounded by glass. But standing above it, Epilogue. Love isn't made in silence. It's made in the echo, in the breaking of rules, in the risk of being seen, and sometimes it's made at the top of the world, where the air is thin, the walls are glass, and the only way forward is through the fire. Together,